Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade tabletop role-playing rules by World of Darkness. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. Listeners should know that this podcast is intended for a mature audience and will include strong language and mature themes. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and so forth, that may bear resemblance to entities living, dead, or undead is strictly coincidental. My name is Rena Henze, and for tonight's game, I will be your storyteller. Good evening, and welcome to a special episode of the Old Ways podcast, Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle, Blood Moon Rising. I'm your storyteller Rena, and tonight we're going to turn the spotlight onto 2 of our coterie members and see what happens after last episode's planning meeting. So let's hear some introductions from our cast members for tonight. So, to my right...
Hi, I'm John, and I'll be playing Vince Markovich of Clan Tremere, who has no reason to be nervous about this evening whatsoever.
Absolutely not. He should never be nervous about anything ever. And to Vince's right...
Hi, this is Allie, and I play Katerina Bogdanovich of Clan Toreador, and you have nothing to be worried about. I just have some questions.
And nothing is ominous about that whatsoever. All right, so we begin this episode just after the events of the coterie meeting together in Marcus's very interesting safe space of a shipping container, where Katerina got perhaps a little bit heated, and Vince is dealing with the fallout from, well, murder. So, after the meeting, the 2 of you decided that you were going to leave together because Katerina wanted to talk to Vince about some things, and so tonight let's see where this conversation takes us. So, you're setting out into the night. Vince was brought by Alex, so Vince doesn't have a car, and Allie usually takes public transportation or walks, so where are the 2 of you going, and how are you getting there?
Well, I guess that depends. Does Vince have a smartphone?
Vince does have a smartphone.
Katerina, me, I would be willing to take an Uber.
Gasp!
Right.
First time this season.
What character development?
I'm not the biggest fan of Ubers because it's strangers and more strangers, and I'm not that worried about being murdered. I'm more worried about murdering the driver if they try anything.
Fair. Vince is not from great background, so he's like, if you want, we can take the tram across the city. Well, then we should take a bus out to my neighborhood. But, it'll take a while. Or we could take the Uber, which is faster.
We should probably do the Uber.
Okay. And he'll just put in a call. He's like, down by the docks, getting an Uber. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, especially because it's early morning at this point, but it is San Francisco, so you do have people out at all hours of the night doing various things. And so eventually you do get a small black car pulling up, and a Pakistani man looks out the window. He looks at the app, comparing the pictures. Looks a little suspicious. He's just like, Vince?
Vince just throws one hand in a casual wave. He's like, yep, right here, bud. And he's like, well, let's go.
Okay.
Do you talk in the Uber, or is it just kind of an awkward silence for the 25 or so minute drive to Vince's bungalow?
Well, that depends. Is Vince holding the door open for me?
An excellent question.
I'm not entirely sure that he would know to do that because he's very modern. Like he's very modern. He's just like, no, people open their own doors where I'm from. But at the same time, yeah, it's just like, are you? He opens his side and he's like, are you not gonna get in?
There's just gonna be a long pause, and I'll open the door and get in.
Well, Vince is in trouble.
He's done something wrong.
We have a long, awkward silence for about 27 minutes as you drive back to Vince's bungalow. The Uber driver is content to not speak. He seems a bit tired, which, given the fact that it's about 2:30 in the morning, makes sense. And he just puts on some Miley Cyrus very, very loud. So you are eventually deposited outside of your bungalow, Vince, and the Uber driver is 5 stars, remember, 5 stars, and gives you a thumbs up.
Listen, 5 out of 5 for not talking.
Absolutely relatable.
Yeah, Vince just nods and is like, yeah, no, didn't talk. We'll give 5 stars.
Yeah. So he drives off into the fairly quiet night. Vince's bungalow is in a decent neighborhood, so it's pretty quiet in the wee hours of the morning. You do hear a couple dogs barking, and somewhere a couple houses down the street, you hear a baby screaming, which they tend to do whenever they feel like it. But it becomes quiet again within a few seconds. So Vince, you are home. You don't know how the ghost is going to feel about things, but you are home at least.
And Vince turns and he's like, Miss Bogdanovich, Katerina, I don't know which one is appropriate. So I live with a ghost and she's technically the landlord. So I'm going to have to ask if you can enter. It should be okay, but just please wait a moment and I'll...
Understood. I can wait.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry about this. And he just like brisk jog up to the front door. He's like, she can see him cringe as he opens the door and just unlocks it, opens it. He's like,
no books come flying at your head this time.
And he's just like, Mina, we have a guest. Her name is Katerina Bogdanovich. She is also a vampire. I have some news for you after she has left, but he just kind of whispers this back. He's like, please be nice.
The pencil that was lying on the floor of the hallway from where the ghost tossed it a couple nights ago lifts, and it just taps the wall once, you assume for yes.
Mm-hmm. And he just leans out the door and just gives her a thumbs up. He's like, it's okay.
And I'll just give you a quizzical look, just raised eyebrow before I walk into the door. And I'll take off my trench coat, because I don't go anywhere without that. And I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, and Vince is kind of like, oh, okay, I've got to get used to the fact that some vampires are literally from a period where this is how things went. So he's like, oh, thank you, I'll just hang it up here. And he actually does have a coat hook next to the door, and he'll hang yours up. And he's like, well, I left mine behind at Alex's house, but I'll have to pick it up at some point.
You should keep track of your belongings better, yeah?
He nods. He's like, yeah, after Karen died, I just got real low. And yeah, I mean, you should have seen me before before we met up earlier. It wasn't pretty. I hadn't fed in a few days, and yeah, it was messy. Still wearing his longshore union.
And borrowed shoes.
And borrowed shoes, yes, sorry. Gifted t-shirt, borrowed shoes.
Well, I had a meeting with another Tremere, and I wrote down some information, but I will need help interpreting it.
Of course. Well, let's go through to the library. I've got a table with 2 chairs there. I've got a desk lamp. We can take our time and work through it.
Very good.
Yeah, he's just like, yes, it's got 2 chairs and, well, one of them's usually for Mina, but I don't think she'll mind.
Yeah, that's, as you say that, Vince, you realize Mina's a bit quiet tonight, right? Other than the pencil tapping on the wall to say that Katerina could come in. Like, it's weirdly quiet in here.
Is she pouting?
Vince has a feeling that when you leave, things will get bad for Vince. Or that things might be bad for Vince in a very short period of time. As we walk in, he's going to be explaining. He's like, so Mina, she was looking for her daughter, who Karen said she had information about, but now that Karen is dead, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get that. It's a little bit more complicated, but I'm still going to be able to work through it. I might need to lean on Alex, though.
There are private investigators. You can always hire someone if needed.
He's like, well, you see, the problem is that Mina died about 100 years ago.
There are family trees, yeah?
My family don't really... We're not the type that keep... Like, there's no printed one. There's no...
There is no even handwritten family tree?
And he just kind of looks at you, he's like, no, we just kind of knew my aunt. And I find out that Mina is my great aunt. Yeah, no, just... I don't know. My family was... And he just pauses and then shrugs. He's like, we just didn't do that.
Well, this is unfortunate, but is not the reason I'm here.
Yes, of course, sorry. And he rearranges the desk so the chairs are side by side. He's like, well...
I'll reach into my other pocket and I'll pull out, like, just this little travel notebook. And it's where I took all my notes while I was at Vera's. And I'll just, like, open it to, like, the first page and hand it to Vince. And he'll see written at the top of this particular page, blood purification ritual.
He's like, oh, you're researching what Karen was up to.
Not only that, but this is from a much older Tremere. I was fortunate enough to have trust in giving me such a secret.
And Vince nods slowly. He's like, wow, Karen was pretty slow, so I can imagine even older members of the clan are slower still to share stuff. And he just puts down the notebook and he's like, he just looks up at her and he's like, you have very nice handwriting. And he's just back to reading.
There are symbols and ingredients and instructions that I simply will not understand, given that I am, well, not practiced in the blood magics.
Vince nods. He's like, well, a lot of it's in code, and some of these things are substitutions. Some of them are symbols that have one meaning in one context and another in our context. So, a big part of my time as a ghoul was learning some of these things so I could get them for Karen. And, well, 3 years as a vampire were mostly, when I wasn't working, I was learning this stuff. So, while I don't know all the secrets, I can have a fair stab. And he's going to sit down and just take out a clean sheet of paper, and he's going to start transcribing the symbols that he recognizes and just like what he thinks that they're most likely to mean in this context.
Okay, so give me occult plus intelligence. And because you're a Tremere, it's only going to take you 4 successes.
7 successes of 4. One of which is a 10. Vince is a nerd.
With that, this is, to you, a fairly simple ritual to read through once you actually get into it. You have to spend a few minutes figuring out the peculiarities of Vera's specific style, or whoever this vampire is. You don't know her name, but whoever's style this is, it's slightly different from Karen's, and it takes you a couple minutes to work out how they phrased things. But once you get it, and you're able to rapidly go through it. And this ritual is based on what you're reading. It dates back at least 1,000 years. It seems to be a very old ritual, and it's for purifying mortal blood of things like the plague. So it appears to be a disease remover.
He looks up from the work to Katerina and he's like, well, originally this was made for kine blood, and it removes disease. Now, I'm not entirely certain that that's what we're looking at. Then he pauses and he scratches. He's like, although I suppose it could be like some kind of weird bloodborne parasite. That doesn't make sense. If it's a disease, this should work. Give me a moment. And he's going to... Oh, damn. Do I have those? Do I have the notes from Karen's house, or are those at Alex's?
It's not with you. You did take notes and you copied down the ritual circle that you saw at Karen's, but in your sort of frenzy, you left pretty much everything at Alex's except for what you were wearing, which is now at Marcus's.
So he leans back in the chair. He's like, okay, unfortunately, I left the vast majority of the notes and evidence gathered so far at Alex's apartment. Now, that's not great. I'm just going to pick those up tomorrow. Until then, I can't really get a firm handle on the difference between Karen's version of the ritual and whichever member of Clan Tremere you got this from.
I will say, Vince, with considering how many successes you got on this, you do pick up on a couple of differences that you just kind of remember. Mm-hmm. Now that your head is a bit clearer and you've had some time to separate a little bit from Karen's death, you are remembering a few things, right? So this one only takes the full blood and bodily fluids of one kind. Karen's took several. Karen seemed to be a very more empowered version of this because it required a lot more blood and other fluids. And you also pick up on there's some different symbols described in the ritual circle on this spell. 2 of them are the same. 2 of the 4 are the same, but 2 of them are different. And without looking, you can't really compare the differences in the symbols, but you know for a fact, just looking at this sketch, the symbol at the top of the circle and the symbol to the left are different symbols from what you remember at Karen's. So I'll give you that with your good roll.
Vince is going to explain this to Katerina. He's just like, well, Miss Bogdanovich, there are some differences between this and Karen's. The number of kine used and the number of the symbols, the number is the same, but and he points to her diagram and he's like, these 2 are different. That's what I've got for you right now. I'd need more reference material than I have here. This library's, while nice, it's very personal. It's it's not the most powerful.
It is incomplete.
And he just nods. He's like, it's definitely not complete.
This ritual is for purifying kind blood. Is there a way to modify, to purify for kindred blood?
And Vince kind of stops and looks at you, and he's like, I don't know. I know we can, with some spells and some rituals, that they can be amplified to affect a member of the kindred, but I don't know the details of how. And he just kind of shrugs. He's like, as far as I can tell, that's all just in the blood. And he's like, my blood as a caster, it would be limited by that.
It's just that, given the nature of the deaths and being the same, and there have been actively 4 that we know of, if we can pinpoint where individuals are being targeted, there might be something in this ritual that would be able to be purged. Whether or not it is something akin to a virus or bacteria, I wouldn't know, as I'm not a doctor. I do know from some other sources that it takes time to rid the body of toxins. And of course, I would know that from the farm and how that works and everything. I wouldn't know all the details, obviously, but I know that there's a process for it. While it is important that we pinpoint where it starts or where the crossover is, if we can combine this ritual with the one that Karen was doing, and if there is a way that you could get into a more complete library, perhaps it is worth it to see if it can be applied specifically to Kindred.
Yeah, and Vince leans back in his chair. He's just like, well, I only know 2 Tremere that are not my sire. You probably know more. And one of them wouldn't be... Well, I don't think he takes kindly to my being sired. And he's just, like, stroking his chin. He's like, well, we can...
Do you have access to a library that you do not need permission to enter?
There's no Tremere that will let you access their library without permission, I'll tell you that much. And even if they do, you'd usually be supervised if you're left in the same room with all their books. It'd be crazy that they'd leave you in the same room unsupervised with them.
Katerina, you could give me a roll, because with your connections in Kindred Society, it's likely that you would have more names, obviously beyond just Vera.
Because I do have contacts.
Right, so you might know who the whip is, for example, the clan whip, in which case Vince could definitely go to them, or you might know some other people. So let's see if you know the right people. So I'm going to say charisma as a social role, and politics.
So I got 3 successes with 1 critical.
Okay, so I'll say with that, you know who the whip is. You have actually catered an event for the whip and their little tribe that they have, their adopted vampire family and their ghouls. You've catered a big family event. And so the whip is Phoebe Van Ness. She's Dutch, or at least used to be, years and years ago, but has lost most of her accent since emigrating, and she's fairly polite to you. But for a Tremere, other than Vera, she's been about the only Tremere who's actually treated you like an equal and not, the staff coming in to cater the party. So she actually takes time to talk to you a little bit. And you're not on intimate terms like you are with Vera, where you sit and talk and you can potentially be invited to the house outside of the party. But she's friendly. So you do know Phoebe.
Now, do I readily have her contact information? Like, if I called the shop, would it be fairly easy for me to get her contact information?
Oh, absolutely. Since she's a client, and since she was a client of the nighttime side of things, right? Then if you called the bakery and Lucy or Cora's working tonight, then they'd be able to find that for you easily.
Well, then I will turn to Vince. Do you have a phone that I could use?
He puts his mobile phone down the table and slides it across to her, and then pulls it back, unlocks the screen, and pushes it across.
And Katerina will stare at it for a long second, looking for the call button.
Karen had been pretty sharp. She liked staying on top of these things, but now Vince is like, oh, I see. And he pulls it back and pulls up the phone application, and he's like, there's the number dial. Please feel free to call whoever. It's on bill pay. I have the minutes. I don't call anyone except work.
Well, I am also calling the bakery because I might have someone who could help.
Oh, fantastic.
So I will go ahead and call the bakery.
So you call the bakery and you hear Cora answer. Dragonfly Confections, this is Cora speaking. How may I help you?
Hello, Cora.
Ah, Katerina. Good evening.
I need you to go into the office and into the file cabinet for all of the past clients, and I need you to find the contact information for one Phoebe Van Ness.
Ah, the Tremere Whip.
Yes.
Of course. Did you get a phone?
No, I am borrowing one.
Miracles will never cease. You hear a low chuckle. One moment, Katerina, I'll be right back. And the hold music comes on. What is your hold music for the bakery? I'm assuming it's not Girl from Ipanema.
No, it is classic, kind of jazzy, elevator music that you would hear in the 60s.
All right, so you hear this jazzy kind of comforting tune come on, and you wait a couple minutes. And Vince, while Katerina is on the phone, a sheet of paper starts sliding across the desk to you, and the pen on the desk picks up and starts writing on the paper. And if you're not paying attention, then the pen goes up and hits you in the forehead and then goes back to the paper.
Vince was paying attention, but it still hits him in the forehead anyway.
Yes, because it looked like you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, no, Vince has been watching it, but he's not been wanting to draw Katerina's attention to this, so he's just looking out of the corner of his eye at this pen writing. And then, of course, she gives him the head weapon. He just turns his head to look. He's like, sorry, Mina, what can I do?
You see scrawling out in very hasty, sloppy letters. And Mina's gotten fairly decent at writing out letters, like ghostwriting, over the last couple of nights. But this is a lot sloppier. And it says, Karen, gone. Sad face. Little frown.
And he nods. He's like, yeah, she's gone. And I don't think I'm going to be able to bring her back.
No. On this side now. She can't talk to me, but I see her.
And yeah, he's just like, oh. She'd hate that. She'd hate not being able to talk to someone. Yeah, there was Can you tell her something?
Can try.
Tell her I'm gonna figure out what it is, and I'm gonna figure out how to stop it, and then I'm gonna get whoever made it.
I tell.
Thank you, Mina.
And everything goes quiet for a minute. The pen drops. Katerina, the hold music falls away, and Cora clicks back on, says, phone number, address, both.
Actually, give me both, Cora, please.
Okay. And she rattles off a phone number and says, well, the last time we catered for her was at the Vampire Club, but she does list an address, and she gives you an address in the financial district. So...
Thank you, Cora.
Whatever you need. Everything all right? It's been very quiet here tonight.
There is just a lot going on that needs to be taken care of, which is why I have not been in lately, but I know that you and Lucy have attended. And, of course, Rere, he is very responsible, so...
Yes, everything's fine here. We can manage a quiet night without you. And there's another low chuckle. You do have some mail?
Will you take it upstairs and put it through the mail slot for me, please?
Of course.
And if you would give our supplier a call to restock some of our vintage, we are running low.
There's another low chuckle. Yes, I'll give Margarita a call, but maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure she'll answer tonight. She said she had a fun time planned. Whatever that means.
In the next couple days, we just need to restock. We have gone through more in the last 30 days than expected.
You got it.
Thank you, Cora. And I'll hang up the phone.
There's another laugh and a click as she hangs up.
And I'll hand the phone back to Vince.
Oh, thank you. So, And he leans back again, and he's just turning in the chair to look at her, and he's like, Ms. Bogdanovich, I have a question. You'd know better than I would. Roughly how many vampires are in San Francisco?
There used to be around 1,000 in this part of the Bay Area, between here and the smaller suburbs and so on. With Clan Gangrel leaving, you're down to about 700, 750.
That's a lot of Gangrel.
Well, the country Gangrel and the city Gangrel, right? So between both sets of the clan leaving, you had lots of small packs roaming around the area.
Well, Vince, there currently are 700 to 750. I do not know the exact number, as I have not met all of them, though I do know a fair amount.
Vince's jaw is just kind of hanging slightly agape. He's like, that many?
Yeah?
I mean, I know it's a big city, but wow.
Let me tell you, there are almost no vampires in Alaska. In the town where I was turned, there were 2 of us in a town of 500 people.
It's just like, wow, that must make feeding and staying undetected really, really... He's like, up there I get it for like winter, but like, what the hell did you do in summer?
I've only completely drained one individual, and that was right after I turned. Even though it is not as fulfilling, my sire, who died so many years ago, he kept a farm, and we sustained primarily off of livestock.
Oh. Yeah, well, that makes sense. And he looks real torn up as he's working up to this. He's like, I've also only drained one person. Actually, it was my first time not bagging. And he's just like, yeah, it felt really good, but I didn't like it.
The frenzy of being too hungry is unrefined, and not having that control is overwhelming for some of us.
Vince nods. He's like, I wasn't even acting like me. I was like some kind of animal. He's like, I mean, obviously, you know the feeling, the heightened senses, the thrill of just the pounce, but afterwards I just realized that I killed somebody. And sorry, it's still a bit fresh. I only did it tonight. It was just a couple of hours ago. I'm still trying to deal with it.
Right after I was turned, there was almost a week before I could properly feed. And my sire was very irresponsible in this way, because one evening when he left me alone, the bloodlust was too strong, and we weren't far from the docks. And I just went down, and the nearest person was very quickly relieved of all of their blood. It took almost no time. And I just left them there. The bloodlust was not completely sated after not feeding for so long. But my sire found it and found me and took me back to the house before I could take another life.
And Vince is just looking at her. He's just like, I can't imagine you ever not being in control.
I can tell you with experience that when you are that far gone, there is no remorse. You do not care that you took a life. And since I've only drained one individual, and it was a very long time ago, it is not something that I'm sorry I did, because if I had gone much longer, the chances of having gone into torpor were very high. And the fact that I'm even still alive is, well, remarkable, considering that I was sired without any permission. So you must understand that this feeling you have of being overwhelmed and feeling like you have murdered an individual will fade over time if you let it. That depends on how much of your humanity you care about retaining. I personally don't retain as much of my humanity, but I do make active choices to not be a complete monster either.
Vince just nods. He's like, I don't know. Ever since I was turned, I've basically just said, oh, I'm still Vince Markovich. I'm still the same guy. I just, have to drink blood now. And food is terrible.
Even though you're a very, very young kindred, what you must come to terms with before even addressing the fact that you have killed someone is the fact that you are no longer who you were. You are forever different now. You will not be who you were. And If you think that is possible, you might as well ask someone to take you now, as you are, before you live too long.
And he just quietly nods. He's like, hadn't considered that. Well, let's unpack that later. Which is almost Vince's catchphrase. So he's like, okay, well, sorry, back to the topic at hand.
I have good news for you. I happen to know Zetremir Whip.
Oh, I know there is one. I just never met one.
She is, let's just say, respectful of the job that I perform. And we are on perhaps friendly terms. I suspect that if I ask her to let you take a look at her library, which I am sure is extensive given the nature of her position, I will owe her a favor. But I am willing to owe her a favor, provided that you can get the information that I need, or that we need to satisfy the prince about what is going on. Because, let's be honest, if we don't have answers for the prince, it could be all our heads.
Well, look, I mean, it won't just be you owing her, it'll be both of us, and I'll owe you, so I always pay my debts. So at least there's that to look forward to.
I can tell you right now that you and I will be in each other's debt, given the nature of what I'm asking you to do. So we will call it even, provided the information checks out.
Of course. Well, if you arrange it, I will show up and I will... He's like, he pauses and he's like, how formal is meeting your clan whip for the first time?
I can tell you that meeting the Toreador clan whip was fairly informal, but that is because we're all very good-natured.
Vince is just like, that doesn't reconcile with any of... And also, what the hell is the Toreador standard of very casual? I'm not entirely sure.
We're all very, very pretty when we show up.
Everyone's just so beautiful.
What I will do is I will need your phone number. I say very reluctantly, because I'm not a fan of phones. I still have a pager.
Yeah.
Phones are not my forte. I have a rotary phone in my house. What I will do is write down everything in this notebook. You must keep it in a safe place, because we cannot have anyone find this before you have the meeting with the VIP, because this research is crucial. I have a feeling.
I think you're right. I think Karen was onto something. I'll need to collate all the notes, but I think she was onto something. I think you were right about it being important.
I feel like, depending on what notes she had, it is incomplete.
Oh, it definitely was. Vince is just constantly leaning backward and forward as he's checking notes and then talking, and leaning forward, check notes, then leaning back and talking. I've just realized that none of them have died the exact same way, twice. They've all... Luther Garibaldi tore his own heart out. Felix Conrad exposed himself to sunlight after removing his own tongue. Aaron Stein, and he just paused, he's like, was chained to the floor, surrounded by her books, and burned.
Did Karen still have her tongue?
Shakes his head. No.
So that is when she was chained to the floor.
And Vince has flashbacks of that time where he noticed as he watched her burn and her face melt, that she didn't have a tongue. He's like, it was removed before she burned.
So, while their deaths are not the same, they do have one overlapping piece of evidence.
He's like, well, technically two, because there's also the symbol of the blood moon.
Yes.
As I've taken to calling it in my notes.
But taking out the tongue is specific so that they cannot speak to whoever may have done it, or as a way to defend themselves appropriately.
Like, I think there's also a third element where Mina, the ghost, was just here, and he just turns the paper and just slides it forward. Karen is on the other side, and she can't talk.
Which means that perhaps none of them can talk.
Luther Garibaldi could not be questioned when seen in the vision by Alex. So I think this is...
So this reaches further than just this plane.
He just nods. He's like, I think this is a specific countermeasure to prevent us using necromancy to simply ask, who did this to you?
Well, then that is why it is even more crucial that we find out a way to try to get ahead of this as much as we can. And this ritual, I think it needs a modification for Kindred. There are too many overlapping signs that make me nervous. This might be the only way. And we don't know what kind of sacrifice it might need.
Vince nods and he's like, yeah, we don't know what's going to require, but we'll be able to do it. If this is the angle. And he's like, good news, by the way, that we do have a known subject who is experiencing all the symptoms, and he's just like thinking of how Trevor has been keeping him up the last few nights. He's just like, and he's pretty far gone, but we can always give it a shot once we get the data.
Well, then I should set up that meeting sooner rather than later, yeah?
Oh, please, Miss Bogdanovich.
Well, as much as I was planning to do it later, I will need your phone again.
And he just unlocks it, brings up the phone app again, slides it back across.
And I will give Miss Phoebe a call.
The phone rings for about 10 seconds, and then you hear yes, Phoebe Van Ness, who is this? I don't recognize this number.
Hello, Miss Van Ness. This is Katerina Bogdanovich.
Yes, from the bakery. I don't think I have a party planned. What can I do for you?
I need your help.
There's a long pause. Oh my. This is, highly unorthodox.
Is most unusual. I do understand.
Quite.
You are the Tremere VIP.
Yes, that has been my job for quite some time.
Well, I have a very young Tremere who recently lost their sire.
Karen's boy.
Yes. I need his help, and subsequently your help now. I will offer a favor for you to call in whenever you wish.
Intriguing.
I need is for this young man to have access to your library to help with something dire. And that is all I can say.
There's another long pause. Answer me this. Does it have to do with how Karen died? You understand, as the whip, it's sort of my job to look into these things?
Yes, I understand, and it is connected to that, and hypothetically more.
Another pause. You can almost hear the wheels turning. Well, we can't have powerful Tremere dying off, and no one knows what happened to them, and I suppose if Karen's boy, I can't remember his name. She's had so many of them.
This one is called Vince Markovich.
Vince, yes. If Vince will agree to supervision in my library, I will allow him in, as he is another Tremere, but I cannot allow you in. As you must understand, it would be impossible.
I understand that your knowledge is very private and crucial that you keep it secret. I understand that I will not be allowed in the library, but I will be his escort.
That I think we can agree to. So as long as young Vincent is fine with supervision to make sure he doesn't get into things that a kindred of his age should not be allowed anywhere near, then, on the basis of the favor you will owe me, I think we have a bargain.
Well, I must inform you that this information might normally be out of his usual studies. It is old information.
Yes, well, if it's connected to Karen, I suppose it would be. But I will supervise and make sure that whatever he gets into isn't too much for his underdeveloped brain.
Then is the soonest that you can accommodate us, because time is of the essence.
Well, not tonight. It's too close to...
No, but in the next couple of days?
Tomorrow night.
Very well.
2 days I have what you would call a baby shower, except it's more for baby vampires. So we always tried to do one for Karen when she sired one, but then after, the 8th or so, it just got to be too much, so...
Very good. May I have your address so that... and the times that you would like our arrival?
Yes, I'll text it to this number, now that I have it in my phone.
Very good. I believe that is all. Thank you very much. I will owe you something very big, I understand.
Yes. Yes, you will.
And I will turn to Vince. Well, we have an appointment with the Tremere tomorrow night. She will send you a text with an address and the time that we will arrive. I will leave you the number for the office at the bakery and the number for my haven. And I'll write those down on just, like the nearest piece of paper. When you get that information, give me a call. And if I do not answer, leave a message on the Haven machine, but not on the office machine.
And Vince is just like, holy crap, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. Thank you very much, Miss Bogdanovich. I'll make sure that information gets to you straight away, and thank you.
As Vince says that, Katerina, pen taps you in the forehead.
Why, you must be Mina, yeah?
And the paper which Vince had turned towards you, the pen drops back to it and starts scratching out Bogdanovich? ?
Yes, Bogdanovich.
I think I knew your father in the old country.
The old country primarily was Russia, yeah?
Yes, and then Markovich to Bulgaria.
Yes.
Smiley face. Cousin. And on that bombshell, we will leave you for this evening.
Fantastic.
So thank you everyone for joining us for this special Spotlight episode. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Vince and Katerina a little bit more, as we definitely enjoyed these interactions, and I will turn in next time for the further adventures of our coterie. Thank you, and good night.